Hello, I'm Matt and welcome to Badger Workshop. Now this is where all that preparation, thinking things through and framing the walls pays off. I start with getting up one of the ends. This has got 18mm OSB on it, so it's got some weight to it. You can see how the OSB is longer than the framing, so I just need to slide that to the end of my base and it should hook over. I was being careful not to push it too far so it didn't drop onto the floor. With it in place, I can then just get it lined up to the edge of the base. Before I lifted it up, I half drove some screws into the 2x3s at the bottom. I got them so the screws were pretty much all the way through that, which means it didn't take much to drive them through the rest of the way. I'd moved into the house on the Sunday, spent Monday and Tuesday framing the ends and the sidewalls, and this was Wednesday morning finally getting them up. I had a motivating factor because this was autumn, and at the weekend some strong winds and rain were predicted. We either had to get it pretty much built and watertight by Friday or wait for another week. I decided I could get it done. Luckily there was hardly any wind this day, as you can see that end wall was held up with some screws and that's it. I mean, I could have braced it, but it all takes time to do, and I thought it'd just be fine and I'd just try and get the next bit in as quick as possible. So on this side wall, the OSB overhangs and that slides over the side of the end. I've only installed the one piece of OSB at the moment. That's keeping the whole of the frame square, but it means it's light enough that I could lift it by myself. So you can see I've half driven these screws through and then they just need putting in the rest of the way. This is just something I've learned through experience. The first time I kind of did this, I put the walls up, which you then got to hold up in place and then think, how am I going to drive screws in? The ends and the side tie together, everything's now nice and strong, I'm not worried about it falling over. The next side piece goes in, and as you can see, again, I've just got the one piece of OSB that really holds everything square. I built the sidewall in two sections because the whole time I'm thinking I've got to lift this on my own, so everything has to be manageable. The other end can then get lifted into place. This is a little more tricky doing this one because then it needs pushing to the left to slide in. And then screw it down and screw it to the side wall, locking all three pieces together. So now to get the final wall in place. Now you can see kind of more here when I lift it up that the OSB hangs over and then needs to be slid along to cover that end wall. Later I can get some more screws through the OSB into the end wall to tie everything together even more. The last piece was probably the trickiest, trying to get it into this gap on my own. But I managed to get it in and I didn't drop any of the walls, which I was worried about because I didn't want to break any of the neighbours' fences. And it certainly felt good to get all the walls up and all of them screwed together. So now I need to install all this OSB. This is going to really make everything nice and strong and rigid. You can see I've piled up loads of scrap bits of wood underneath so I can sit the OSB on that. That gets it to the correct height and then I can come along with the nail gun and nail it all in place. After I'd got all the OSB up, I was shattered and that was pretty much the end of the Wednesday. Thursday morning I came out and the first thing I did was remove this bit of wood from where the door frame is. I'd installed the OSB up to the door, but I'd actually gone over the windows, which you'll see later. This bit of wood going across is just a temporary thing. It's keeping the side walls the correct distance apart, as they would naturally want to bow in at the top. And some PU glue in place, and then that curve I cut and laminated together can get installed in place. And a little tricky getting these things up on your own, and an extra pair of hands would certainly be handy. But later, I'm going to come to regret that thought. As soon as I got this screwed in place, I let that glue dry and then I can remove that first bit of wood. So again, this is where that preparation work beforehand pays off. I can now install these rafters. The beam hangers are already in place and these timbers are 3 meters long and that's the length they came in, so they just slot into place and then I can put some screws in. There's 3 of these either side and this structure is now really starting to feel rigid. As I said, when I was putting the OSB on, I covered the windows. Much easier to do it this way, and it's stronger than using lots of little bits of OSB all around it. Obviously you are going to have the wastage of the bit you cut out, but I'm sure I'll use it on a shop project later. It's now time to get the workshop wrapped in a breathable membrane. Every time I've built a shepherd's hut, I've bought a roll of this stuff. There's always bits left over, and I actually moved with 3 rolls of it. This one comes with a built-in roll of tape, which makes it very tricky to install on your own. So I just roll it all around, and then I can go back and get some staples in to hold it in place. Unfortunately, at this point, after all my talk about preparation, I realised even these 3 rolls were not going to be enough. So I had to stop, jump in the car and drive into Durham to go to Screwfix and buy some more. But with that done, I can continue with it. And doing the curved roof is definitely the hardest part. With one piece, I worked along the first rafter, stapling it on, and then pulling it taut down the side and stapling it there. I could then do exactly the same down the other side. That just left the gap in the middle. Now this was the really tricky bit, trying to roll this down and then leaning over getting some staples in. At this point I was definitely thinking, why did I not just build a flat roof? Unfortunately, also at this point the wind was getting up a bit. But I managed to get it in place, and then I could go round and tape up all the seams. This is a bit belt and braces. You can see the joints, and water will run over the joints rather than into them. I was pretty shattered at this point, but I wanted to push on and get the roof on. They aren't too heavy, these sheets, and they slide up okay doing it on your own, but you've got to wear gloves because they can have some razor sharp edges. So I've got some specialist screws for this. They've got self-drilling heads and then rubber caps on them so no water can get in. But the tricky bit is trying to get a screw in that actually hits one of the rafters, so I'm knocking up this quick jig. Just a bit of thin flexible timber I've got that I'm putting this hook on the end. The idea is the hook will go on the edge of the corrugated sheet. I will then be able to flex the timber to the contour of the roof. I'm going to do this at the edge so I can see where the rafters are, and then with a Sharpie mark out the positions of them. I just need to mark out the position of the first one and the top one because it should be mirrored to the other side. Now I can get some screws in. So the first one just goes into the top plate of the wall. You want to get the screws through the ridges as the water runs through the troughs. Now I can try out my jig template thing. So I hook it on the end and then it curves around to the roof, and then I nearly dropped my drill. That had been a great video if it had caught me falling off a roof. So anyway, I can line the screw up with the mark I've made and then get it screwed into place. This worked really well. I just couldn't reach the ridge one from the ladder, so I went along and installed all the sheets apart from the screws in the ridge. I just got my last sheet in place as my dad turned up. He'd insisted to come up, and I'm doing air quotes when I say this, to help. So he helped as I got onto the roof and worked along getting the ridge screws in. The roof sheets really tie everything together and make it all very rigid. I was very pleased to finish the day on Thursday with it this watertight and secure. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe for more videos.